Welcome to Dante's Harmony Podcast, your source for music mentoring and motivation. Join me, Dante Harmon, a multi-instrumentalist, recent inductee into the Sacred Steel Hall of Fame, and newly inducted Grammy voting member, as I host a podcast spotlighting sacred steel musicians from all across the nation and abroad. Dante's Harmony Podcast provides insightful interviews, exclusive music, untold history, and so much more. Thank you for tuning in to part 2 of the Sacred Steel Legends, the Campbell Brothers, as we talk more about their latest album and more.
You end up getting an education that, because if it wasn't for this consignment, there's no way we would have dissected and worked and found out what we're sharing with you today
Right.
about Coltrane. And the same thing happened with Miles Davis, because they said when he did All Blues, the story is that he was walking by a Pentecostal church, and that inspired him to do All Blues.
Wow.
And you would never know that.
You would never know that because of how it's classified and how things are put out.
Correct.
But the behind the scenes, the actual real story, the untold story, the truth of the matter is that, it was all godly. It was all God. It was all divine,
Yes.
Inspired. That says a lot.
And that's actually the unknown secret of many of these great artists.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get exposed to it in some of these documentaries and things like that. But
Yeah.
many musicians, especially if they've been in the business for any length of time and survived the road, the way they survived it is they had to have some degree of spirituality.
Right.
Now, the church might say, yeah, but that doesn't mean they were saved. That's fine. But guess what? They're living by something.
Correct.
They're working. They're using some standard of separation that says there are certain things I won't do and there are certain lines I won't cross. Right. That's how they're able to survive the road.
Wow. I'm glad you said that. I was going through your discography and just looking up some of the artists that you played for. Buddy Guy, the Allman Brothers, Bootsy Collins, Medeski, Martin and Wood, and on and on and on and on and on. One of the questions I wanted to ask is, what has it been, and what has your takeaways been from working with those greats? You just mentioned Miles Davis. You talk about Coltrane, but what is it like to meet someone that you'd admired from far off, and then you're sharing the stage with? Like, what do you walk away with Buddy Guy? This blues legend. How do you walk away from being on the same stage with him? And what are your takeaways from such greats?
Well, my takeaway is that all these guys have worked hard, and a lot of them have not been appreciated or paid as they thought they would. But they still persevered and kept going. And at some point, they get the accolades, or they don't get them all, but they get some accolades. But their whole thing to us is always, I can't believe how y'all make it talk.
Wow.
And I can't believe how you guys play. And Phil has this unique style that they like. They haven't heard anybody play like that. Mm-hmm. Because he didn't really copy all the guitarists out there word for word.
Right.
And I guess the best story I got is meeting Ernie Isley.
Okay.
On the Hendrix tour. He tells me and Darick that he wants to talk to Darick and myself.
Okay.
And I'm saying, okay, what did we do? Because he's kind of like he cracks a lot of jokes,
Okay.
but he's real deadpan about it, and
Okay.
he's similar to your father.
Okay. Okay.
You don't know if it's a joke or a reprimand
Right.
till
Right.
you go and just think about it for a while,
Like he just cut me.
or you see him the next time and he's acting normal when
Okay.
you thought he was reprimanding you. So I thought maybe Darick and I was joking on the bus too much, and he took offense to that. So he pulled us in and he said, "Hey man, I gotta tell you guys something. So come on back here." Went in the back of the bus and he says, "Man, let me tell y'all, when y'all make that thing moan," he said, "man, all I can think about is church and my brother singing something. That's like Ron singing. When y'all do that,
Yeah.
he said, when y'all do that, man, y'all, Robert, when y'all be doing that stuff, man, gent," he said, "Man, let me tell y'all one thing. Don't y'all ever stop playing that like y'all play it. Don't you ever stop." And and so Darick and I say, "Hey, man, you joking with us or what?" He talking about, "No, man, I'm serious." And then his wife came to us and said, "Hey, Ernie comes back and listens to you all set every night."
Wow.
And that's the kind of accolades you get from these musicians. And it's really B.B. King was another one that was which come to find out he liked playing steel, and George Benson. They loved the
Yeah.
steel.
Yeah, and I think my story was we were in Chicago and we met Herbie Hancock on the elevator.
Okay.
And he's like, "Who are you? Hey, who y'all with?" We said, "Campbell Brothers." Campbell Brothers. Oh man, that's great. I said, "Oh, stop, man. I know. Okay, you just being nice." He said, "No, man, y'all play that the church music, man." He's like, "Hey, keep it up, man.
So he
That's
knew.
nice, man." He knew I couldn't look. I'm like, stop it. So
Right.
we've
Right.
had those kinds of moments where
Yeah.
people who we felt would never know who we
Right.
were know who we are, which is that I think that's the biggest shock of all, you know. And the way Chuck and Darick have played, invariably where they play, it's been that way, and same with the other steel players,
Right.
Figure steel players, and I'm just proud of these guys. Chuck will tell you when I started. I remember when I was even learning Isley Brothers stuff back in the '70s when I was in high school, and I was learning Return to Forever and all the fusion stuff. And I told Chuck them back then, he'll tell you, I said, "Listen, the way y'all play those guitars, if the world heard y'all, they would not believe it."
Right.
I say because the tone and the way you all are phrasing, this is the stuff they actually go to school to try and learn.
Right.
This is what they imitate the greats and try and learn. I said, man, listen to me. And Chuck will tell you, but back then I told him. So we had one person that said he told us back in '69. I told him in '79. And and sure enough, but I said if they ever heard Henry or Calvin or Ted, I said
They
or
lose it.
Chuck, I said their minds would be blown.
They
Because
lose
this
it.
is the tone they're actually trying to go get and achieve.
Yes.
And they had it already.
And it was natural. It was a thing to hear. I would get fascinated just listening to some of the things that we did with hymns. I had to, of course, totally unlearn or relearn
Yep.
a lot of my approach to
Yep.
hymns,
Yep.
playing other places because the sacred steel or the house of God way of playing a hymn was not the according to the hymn book or to other church
To the
standards.
hymnologist.
To the hymnologist. And we had our own interpretation of even the hymns. And
Yes.
it was so unique to hear Henry do a hymn, to hear Calvin do a hymn, to hear Ted do a hymn, and even you, Chuck, to do a hymn, and then hearing you, Phil, hearing Kenny and some of the other great guitarists come behind and accommodate and accompany them in just the way the style in which they played it. It was so unique. And that within itself is an interpretation of within our church, just doing it, just playing a hymn. You know, if somebody came from the outside just to hear us play a hymn, they're like, wait a minute, hold on, this is not.
No, we've had keyboard players come to us and say, I heard what you did, and I was like, wait a minute, that's wrong. And he almost said that's wrong. Then he said, no, it's not wrong. It actually makes sense what you're doing, but I would have never thought
to do that,
to voice it that way.
Yep.
Right. And I think, and again, it's actually, you know, the great keyboard players or great musicians, they can get with that and learn from it. It's the guys that are limited. Those are the guys that turn their nose up and go, oh, you're playing that all wrong.
Right.
Musicians go, hey, wait a minute, man, that's a
just
whole
open
different
me
take.
up.
Wait a minute, what you doing there? And so I can always tell when a guy says, hey, man, don't take me out of my comfort zone because I can't swim. As opposed to someone's got that is out there that say, hey, man, I'm on the lookout for new and fresh. Thank you.
Right.
Yeah, that's just like I told your. I remember I told Eddie and the musicians when he had me to do a seminar.
Yeah, in Florida.
I said the main thing about playing with people, and especially on hymns,
right,
is whatever the other musicians are doing. In other words, if they can't do the complex chords or the augments and diminishes with you, don't do them.
Right.
Because you'll clash.
Right.
But I said, you know, you can do a hymn in one key, all the hymns. Just stay in one key. Mm-hmm. He said, nah, you can't. You can't do that. So I said, I'll play it, and I'm going to stay in the same key. So I had your mother sing, and they were singing the hymn, and I just stayed in one key, and everybody started laughing. And the reason why that's funny is because I went to a few churches where the musicians wouldn't change. They didn't know how to play the one. They didn't change one. They just stay on the one, man.
Right. Yeah.
They stayed on the one the whole time.
The whole time.
But it worked.
Yeah.
It works. And that's the thing we've learned because we went to church so much and played so much that we would experiment. You know, you playing the same song sometime Sunday after Sunday or Wednesday and Friday and Sunday.
Right.
And so you end up experimenting, but that's
trying
the
out
nice
things
thing about hymns.
Yeah.
And songs.
So that in songs, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you have those songs that you could stay on the one and just fly. You know, it's funny we talk about that and Phil, when you were talking and something you said it. Real musicians really take that and they say the ones that are not limited say, yeah, we can do something with that. You know, we can take what you just did and no, I like that. I was 2004. A friend of mine called me. Jasper Williams was looking for a piano player, and I started playing for Jasper Williams. But I felt like I got saved all over again, man, because that interview process was something. He had me at the board, he had me at the table, and then when they brought me out to play, of course he's there. He's singing all of his old stuff. He comes out with this hymn. And I knew it, but I knew it House of God way. Okay. Mm-hmm. And it was it wasn't Amazing Grace, but it was another Baptist hymn that they have a funny loop. Like they go to the 2 instead of going to the 4 or something like that. Mm-hmm. And and it was, but what I did fit. And the musician turned around and they looked at me like, nah, it was wrong, but that was right. You know, like, hold on, do that again. Exactly. And even Jasper looked at me and he said, I like you. And it was a moment for me. And what you just said just made me think about that moment, because our interpretation of how we play something, our approach to it, that's really what makes us so unique. Our style, our approach, even the way you guys approach. And I'm gonna play a couple of these tracks just to talk about them a little bit. But the approach, the way I would be so fascinated certain years as a high school student and just a drummer before I even started with the steel, just listening to you all play. Now I was one of the ones that was interested in the hymns and the stuff that Phil was doing and you were doing, Chuck. When y'all were doing hymns, it was like textbook. Like y'all didn't hear that? You know, Phil was doing like going to the 4 chord, a half step above the 4 chord and sliding back, 2 frets, doing some minor inversions of the hymns that we were singing, and it fit. And I went home and studied that stuff like, whoa, okay, this is good. But I think the thing that really makes us unique is just the fact of being able to try it and it work, and we not be scared to do it. And then, as you said, when we go out, they hear us doing our normal stuff, and they're freaked out like, wait a minute, what is this?
Right.
Well, the other thing though, Dante, I'm not sure it's there. I think there are some guys operating on, hey, I'm just going to try it and see what happens. But no, there's still a certain amount of, what I would call consecration and anointing to this, as in there are certain things I'm not going to do.
Right.
So I'm gonna do it at home. I think it sounds fantastic at home, but we call that the basement. Everything sounds good in the basement.
That's right.
Okay. But when you come to the church, that's the litmus test.
Hello.
Now, at the same time, it's still a church service. So you're not just trying stuff just because at the same time, we're not here for my musicianship.
Right.
We're here still to edify the service.
Right.
So anything that's going to interfere with that, you're still not trying to do. But yet you gotta whip it out and see whether or not it's true.
Right.
And whether or not that's the litmus test. And we always say our test always, if it works in church, it'll work anywhere.
Anywhere.
That's how we've always judged how great a tune actually is, right? Yeah. And but still in all, make no mistake that you still have to bring that. And I think that's where guys get caught. Mm-hmm. They're taking licks and just dropping them in without the context and without really thinking about, does this really fit? Does it really add anything to it? Versus, hey, I just ripped off a new lick that I just learned. Right. Completely different context. And that's the difference, I think, a lot of times as far as how this works for people.
Yeah, I totally agree. So we go from that. I want to play a snippet of Acknowledge and give me just in your own way who came up with the different arrangements and. So this is Acknowledge off of the Campbell Brothers' latest album, the Campbell Brothers Present, John Coltrane's A Love Supreme. Again, the musicians on this album, Phil Campbell on rhythm guitar, you got Chuck Campbell and Darick, the late great Darick Campbell on, Chuck is on pedal steel, Darick is on lap steel. And then we have Carlton Campbell on drums and Darick Bennett on bass. Mm-hmm. Phenomenal. So acknowledgement. Yes. Who was really responsible, or did everybody kind of contribute to the interpretation and to the phrasing and to the?
Back to what Chuck said, we started out with this note for note kind of. So first of all, to go back, we had to learn A Love Supreme.
Yeah.
Okay, so that in and of itself was quite a challenge. I mean, that took some time just to learn the music itself.
Yeah.
Now we come back and now we come circle back around and say, okay, now how do we actually interpret this? Because
Okay.
we're not here to do a cover,
Right.
right?
Right.
Um, and I think ultimately what we arrived at was call and response.
Okay.
So a
Okay.
love supreme, how do we make that? So now we almost make it almost like a congregational song where Chuck is soloing,
Mm-hmm.
but yet we're doing a call and response of a love supreme.
Okay.
And that's what the rhythm actually is doing. And then I think from there, I think Carl decided to take it up tempo, as opposed to, again, the original tempo.
Right.
And then from there, Darick Bennett fell in with the bass, and
It just
that formed the bed. But again, what really makes the track still is still Chuck being able to channel Coltrane as the solo, and I mean that's the amazing part of that. And that's where I come along and say, I don't think I'm going out too far on a limb to say I'm not sure if there's any other sacred steel player that could do what Chuck did as far as that interpretation of John Coltrane's lead and solo on that piece.
I'm still blown away. I'm in agreement to your sentiments, Phil, because when I heard it, I was just like blown away. And the things that of course, it made me go back and study, but the things I heard you do, Chuck, it was unbelievable. And the chords, the progressions, just, and as Phil was saying, the call and response style in which you guys took it and ran with. How difficult was it? Did you have to chart out everything, or when
Chart
you
out.
Yeah, chart it out. Yeah, I got to say that
Man,
because you know what that is.
No, man, the Holy Ghost gave me the chart. That was the Holy Ghost. You chart out, man. You are trying to do this from the muscle, man. Huh? We had to come from a spiritual, but coming back around, I feel like everybody gave their own contribution to their contribution, because Darick Bennett and Carlton, actually I think they've had some jazz training,
Right.
and Phil I think he's had, or at least he knows a little bit,
Okay.
because he used to be into that fusion stuff, man, and I couldn't get with it, but he was into it, and Darick Campbell,
Mm-hmm.
he's so melodic
Yeah.
that he ends up, he always pulled me in, because whereas I overplay, he seemed to put things in the right spot with the right tone. And so when you put it all together, even when we hear it, we're amazed too, because it's really, so it almost turns into a thing where the Lord came in and sanctioned what we were doing
Right.
and made it as good as it is, because
Right.
we, coming from our own knowledge, I don't see it.
Yeah. That speaks to the depth of the album. And again, for those of you all that have not downloaded to listen to it, you want to check it out. There's so much on it. Is so the bass solo, the drum solo. I know I'm probably going to have to do definitely have to do another podcast with those two guys, with Darick and Carlton. And my goodness, they went all in on the bass solo and the drum solo. So
Yeah, no question.
yeah, and it speaks again. It speaks to the musicianship, and to be a musician, to be a multi-instrumentalist myself, and to dive into a piece like this, a movement like this, you have to be dedicated and really, really get into that space of really wanting to be all in, because that everything that you guys did on this was just phenomenal. So I went back and I started looking at your discography. Pass Me Not, back in '97 with our Hooli. You have the Sacred Steel tour in 2001 that you all have done. Sacred Steel for the holidays in 2001. Can You Feel It in 2005? Beyond the Four Walls in 2013. So much more. And then here we land in 2021 with the Love Supreme. I have to ask, out of all of these, what's your favorite?
Believe it or not, it's hard to pick, but one you left out was Sacred Steel Live.
Sacred Steel Live, yes.
Which the reason why that's so important, because when we first did Pass Me Not and we started touring, people were saying the Campbell Brothers music is so unique, and all the things, the accolades that they associate with Sacred Steel. And Chuck and I, we said, no, this is not Campbell Brothers music. It's House of God music, of which we're part of the tradition.
Right.
And so Sacred Steel Live was supposed to be a Campbell Brothers live album, but we asked our Hooli if we could include Calvin Cook, Ted Beard, and then Robert snuck in because he was there at the dedication.
Right.
But really, we wanted them to be on so that the world could understand where we came from, and that we were a third generation in this tradition.
Right.
And then we were fortunate enough to be able to interview Willie Eason and have him come to our Father's Assembly and play.
Right.
And then we recorded that in that assembly. And so putting that album together, that was one of the most gratifying things, because in that album, we were basically able to pretty much present a history of Sacred Steel with Willie Eason,
right,
and then the second generation of Calvin and Ted, and then us, and then the next generation of Robert. That's what Sacred Steel Live ended up becoming. So that's why that's such a monumental piece, that one, we were able to convince the record label to and allow us to include those greats on that album, and what it ended up becoming.
Yeah.
And I still like Sacred Steel on tour because it had those church tracks in it. Because 4 of those church tracks were actually on the same Sunday. So that service went like 2.5 hours, and it was all blazing that whole entire day.
Wow.
And so that album was crazy too.
Yeah.
So that's why I love that album, because it's almost all raw church.
Sure. I like that. Raw church. Raw Sacred Steel church. What about you, Chuck? What's your favorite?
Favorites are I like those for all the reasons Phil declared. I really like them all because I'm always surprised that they come out as well as they do.
Right.
And because we really don't have a formula other than what we used in church.
Right.
And that was we try not to play too long, but you got to give enough, and you got to get into the spirit. But my favorites is Pass Me Not, because I was just shocked at the way that came out. And also Chosen Few.
Yeah.
And I think it's mainly because of all the people we've worked with.
Yeah.
On those different, it's always, it became more of a fellowship.
Yeah.
And, you had different people helped us to be where we was, and a lot of them are gone now.
Yeah.
Charles Flannery and Ricky Fowler, and a lot of them, a lot of us have your father, perhaps,
who gave so much commentary and contribution to the album.
Well, they also they gave us confidence. Ed gave a lot of confidence. He made us feel, because he was telling us the different people he run into in Chicago and the different artists that he knew. Yeah. And he was like, "Hey, man, y'all just as good as them, man. You just and I wish we would have took more of his advice, but some of the church albums we worked on with the House of God, they ended up, everything always turned out better than I had. Maybe I got low expectations, but they always turned out better.
No, this is great, and I know him and Anthony would be raveling like crazy over this album.
Look,
So
man, let me tell you something. And you remember I gave you that. I sent you a text, and I told you
yeah,
Anthony Harmon.
yeah,
He was out of all the players. He was the only guy. I always admired everybody's playing, and I appreciate it.
yeah.
He was the only guy I actually wanted to play.
Wow,
I wish I could play exactly like him.
wow, wow.
I mean, that's how great he was, man.
Yeah.
Everybody else, I said, hey, man, that's great. I love how you play. I appreciate it. You inspire me.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, no, I'm actually jealous. I want your gift. I want to play like that. That's how great that guy was, man.
Yeah.
I just admired him to death, man.
Yeah.
Besides him being one of the crazier guys you would ever want to deal with, man. Oh man, he was nuts, man.
Anthony was a riot.
He was nuts. Yeah, but no, he was again. Your family, man. It's just just some of the great musicians in this church, man.
Yeah, I was. It was an honor. It was an honor to. When my mom was just here and she was with me and we were just talking and reminiscing and the Tommies. I listened to a lot of choir music growing up, so the Tommies. Yeah, you had Clay. We called him Clay but Clay Evans.
Yep.
In Fellowship. In Chicago and Charles Hayes and all of that. That was my beginning. So
Milton Brunson.
So we were listening to Milton Brunson, and that's what started the conversation. And we started listening to Keith Pringle, and watching them direct. And everybody's looking at Ricky Dillard is like, nah, y'all need to go back and look at some of these directors from back in the day,
right?
Like Tyrone Block and Benny Cummings out of New York, and all these folks that paved the way for like your Ricky Dillards. But as a drummer, growing up, they would take me everywhere with them, and I was exposed to live recordings and doing all kind of session work, what we consider studio stuff. This was Saturday. We had a thing called Saturday Night Sings in Chicago, and it was literally a live recording every Saturday, and it would be televised every Saturday night. So it was Anthony would take me with him. Dad would have me there, and sometimes I get a chance to be with the other drummers and play and just do little things here and there. But it's those lessons that they taught me in the basement, where nobody saw me develop, that really got me to where I am as a musician. And they were tough on me. They would teach me little things here and there, but they were very tough on the discipline aspect of musicianship, and I appreciate it now. And just going back, even when we were talking about the chosen few, my dad he came home when he had the tapes, he had the cassette tapes, he had the unedited versions of all the songs, and he would just play. He said, "Now listen to this cut right here." He said, "Now I told Chuck he need to re-record this and stick that there." And Phil wasn't doing anything on bass, so I had to come in with the four. I had to come in on the fourth string and show him what I was trying. And so he played it. So I would get this premise before he played the track. And when he played the tape, I was like, wow. And listening to Pramal Gate and listening to all those other hits, man, that's still. Listen, I'm waiting for y'all to redo that.
But the thing is though, Dante, first of all, Ed came just to essentially produce when it's all said and done. Mm-hmm. Because he basically to give advisement about, as he said, what should go there, what was working, what wasn't.
Right.
And so now we say, hey man, why don't you play on the track? And he's like, me? Nah, this is what really knocked my socks off. So now he's shocked that we would ask him to play on the track.
Okay.
And I'm going, yeah, what, man? You're a bad boy. Why would you play?
Right.
And I think, again, it's caught up in that whole aspect of this is the Campbell Brothers album. And, of course, we weren't the Campbell Brothers at that time. But the point is, this is you all's album. And the fact that y'all would ask me to play when I know you got bass players that can play.
Right.
But we were like, hey, man, it'd be an honor if you joined us. And so and then he went and did his famous lick, where he does the slide down, slide up, and then drop to the E, and chorus, So, and no, man, that was it, man. I'm telling
Yeah,
you
you couldn't
that
beat
was
him on no choir, man.
yeah.
You couldn't beat
No,
Ed
that
with
was
the choir. With that choir
yeah,
stuff?
yeah,
Nope.
No.
That
yeah,
was his forte.
yeah,
Yeah,
That was
him
his
and Dante
forte.
was pretty tough on that stuff, man.
Yeah.
Him and
yeah,
Lorenzo.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were pretty tough with that choir stuff, man. That Hawkins stuff. Oh my
yeah,
goodness.
That was their lane.
yeah.
Yeah.
That was
No
their
question.
lane. That was their lane. And he would tell you up and down. He had me just, matter of fact, you say Hawkins, one of the drummers that I admired growing up, and he introduced me to him was Joel Smith, the late Joel Smith.
Yeah.
That's who I mimicked my style after. Because Joe was like a walking, just a time machine.
Yeah.
His timing was, and this is before, we have all these click tracks. Joe was.
Oh no, yeah.
Joe was
he was
just
locked
solid.
in. He was locking.
He was locked
Yes.
in.
Oh,
He was
big time.
he was locked in, and that was some of the stuff that they did. When I moved here in Atlanta, and I started developing on keys, he said, "Okay." Anthony would tell me, "Yo, get in contact with Kevin Bond." Okay. I knew he was, but I was just like, okay. I was surprised, like, okay, yeah, that's the one you want to listen to. I was like, okay. And every person that they pointed me to it was for a specific reason. And when I found those things out, it's like, man, I'm glad I met him. I'm glad. I got
But you
connected to
had
him.
in-house advantages too. You had Uncle Rodney, man, and all this stuff. I mean, man, look, let's face it, man. You talking about being born with a musical silver spoon.
Come on, man.
I mean, come on, man. Literally, it was all right there, handed to you on a silver platter.
No, man, I had to work for it, man. I had to work for it.
No, they made you work for
yeah,
it, but
sure
it was
you
all
did.
still right there for the taking, bro.
Yeah, that works.
Yeah, your family was like crazy, man.
Man, listen, and it was like this when we got together, and the people that I didn't know even when I was younger that would come to the house is like, wow, to know them now and to understand who they were, it's just unbelievable.
Right.
But
Yeah.
But you guys were always talked about and still topic of conversations, even with me and my brother to my brothers to this day, Rico and Ed. So you already know. Y'all know Rico hands on. So right.
Yeah, he's one of a kind.
He is. Rico is.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. So
Yeah, we'll leave that where it is, man. Okay.
No, when you catch Rico when he's on, you can't beat him.
you can't beat him.
Oh, you're dangerous. No, you're dangerous,
He's
man.
on, man.
He's a dangerous man.
You do some,
He goes into his world.
man.
He does. He does. He goes into his world. So I'm gonna leave with this. I like to ask this question, and maybe it's just something to think about. But if you were to write a book, if somebody were to write or do some type of book or help you do a book, what would it be about? And what would you say? What would you have to say in that book?
I think for me, it would definitely be evolution and enlightenment, because there are things that we were taught as growing up spiritually and foundationally about how the world works and what spirituality is and what the church is and all those things. Mm-hmm. And they're true.
Right.
To a large extent, but there are still things beyond that we had to learn.
Yeah.
And some of it we had to learn the hard way.
Yeah.
And some of it you learn just from growing and maturing and experiencing life. And I still consider myself to be in that evolution and growth and maturing stage. But I think the thing that helps now is that I fully understand and expect that there will always be new levels, new heights, more evolution and more enlightenment as we continue down this path. Yeah. That I didn't know, years ago,
Right.
but now I fully expect it,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's the difference now, and why life is easier
Right.
now. But at that time, it was a lot of growth pain. It took a lot of growing pains to actually understand that the foundation that I was given, which was very successful
Mm-hmm.
and worked wonders, but it still was not the end all,
Right.
and that there was more to it than
Yeah.
that. That would
Wow.
be my book.
Wow. Wow. Chuck.
Well, my book would be more technical
Mm-hmm.
about the sacred steel and pedal steel and knowledge that's been given to me that almost came through experience,
Right.
not from books. But then I was able to relate it when I found out what the books were talking about.
Yeah.
And the pedal steel and the way we play it,
Mm-hmm.
the way we tune it, is very consistent over different keys
Yeah.
as to scales and also chord progressions.
Yeah.
And so I would like to leave that knowledge that I have gained in some kind of book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And I would love to write the forward to that book, because what Chuck actually did is he broke the code in such a way,
Yeah.
and I didn't even understand it at the time when he was laying it on me.
Yeah.
But he actually took the Nashville system, essentially, applied it to the steel, and then applied it to sacred steel, and then created a tuning around it
Yes.
that enabled it, right, with minimal leg and pedal and knee lever pushes to actually implement it in a tuning and in practice,
Right.
and then ripped it in church after all of that.
Right.
Right. And that's what was crazy. When I came to understand what he was actually doing, I said, man, this is crazy.
Yeah.
And he actually simplified things for me because he had broken that code. And then that's what opened up my world as far as what chord progressions were and how they fit and how they worked.
Yeah.
Because of what he did on the steel.
And I think
Once I understood it.
yeah, and that says a lot. And for those of you all that are listening, you understanding the Nashville system or the Nashville tuning that Phil was talking about, that's the E9 and C6 standard tunings that most steel players in Nashville used for their instrument, for the steel guitar. And I say the same thing, Phil, because to take a tuning, to take either one of those tunings and incorporate it into one, and again with the use of pedals and knee levers, and even and I talked about this the last time I was with you guys, the way you innovated sound. You took where a lot of effects and a lot of things that weren't used, back in the day as much, as far as sound effects, and you innovated sound. Not only the tonality of it, but the approach to it. You didn't kill him, you didn't overdo it, but you gave it to him enough to understand that be creative. Come up with your own type of sound and style. But you guys innovated that. Y'all did that. You all did that for this generation, to the point where we really relish in that. I mean, I think even with myself, I use the wah pedal. That's my thing, and I love the clean sound and all that. But to be able to utilize that, I have to look to you guys. Like, y'all really came in and innovated that, and that's kudos because a lot of the young guys even today are still doing it because of you. Some of the guys using the same effects that you have. I mean, verbatim. Come on, to get that sound, because they were so wanting to emulate themselves after you all. So
They do a good job too, and
yeah.
The church has really given us a whole lot of innovation, different musicians, and I tell people it really never was a competition,
Hmm.
but you definitely had a zeal
Yeah.
to do your best,
Yeah.
which ended up always taking us to a higher spot. And because you'd see a guy do something that you say, okay, I didn't know it could be done like that. That's nice.
Yeah.
And you try to continue to be a part of the growth.
Yeah.
You know.
And that says it all. That says it all. I have to ask before we go. I know Phil and Chuck. We talked about this the last time, and you showed me some of the results of those recordings from back when I think we had the centennial celebration. I know we have a new leadership in place now. Are there any talks of ever releasing some of that music, the book, the DVD, or any of that material for the future?
No.
And there you have it.
Yeah, but I think. But by the way, and it needs to be said that it was really a beautiful thing to be able to come back home.
Yeah.
In the 2021 General Assembly,
Yeah.
it was great to be back.
Yeah.
To see as many people as we did, and it was really gratifying. And you have to thank the chief overseer, and and his assistant, Elder Clary Butler, for reaching out to say, hey, we want our musicians to come back home, and they were gracious enough to invite us back, and just wanted to say thanks, because
And you guys sounded
it
amazing.
actually meant more than I thought it would. I think that's as simple. You go into it thinking, okay, I got to come down to play, and I'm giving something, and I actually go as far as to say I received more than I gave.
Wow.
By being back. So it was that profound.
Yes.
What were you saying, Chuck?
When I said no, it's just something I don't think we would open up,
Yeah.
to try to do.
Yeah.
I mean, if they wanted to, it's there.
Yeah.
But that's it's.
But
We'll
Chuck, so let me ask you something. So Dante, just so I get it, just so I understand. So like most people have not heard the Centennial recording or seen the DVD or whatever. I mean,
No.
because I was under the impression that a number of that people had kind of seen it.
Not
No?
the Centennial. They saw the Millennium.
They saw the millennial, but
I mean, they heard the Millennium. We did the CD,
Yeah.
Right.
but not the
The
Centennial.
Centennial.
You remember they took them and buried them.
Well, I know they kind of buried them, but I thought that it still got out, quote unquote.
No.
And I thought it really, wow.
No.
I didn't realize that.
No.
Okay.
No. And that says a lot about that, but no, it wasn't. It
No
wasn't.
hard
No,
feelings
that's
on the side, but just
Yeah, this is business.
well. No, I think, but here's the thing. So you raise an interesting point that it's about time, and the only reason I say that, not because it's our work per se, but I think the church really accomplished something there,
Yeah.
and I think it's sad that they're not aware of what they accomplished.
Yeah.
The DVD and the documentary actually captures the event of what the church actually accomplished, and I think like I said, I just thought people had it had leaked out or whatever that is. I don't know that people had seen it. If they haven't, they've been deprived, because the church really did accomplish something that was very, very significant.
Yeah. I agree.
And so maybe, I don't know, maybe we need to reach out and say, hey, we have it. If the church is interested, here it is. And just make it available, because it truly is. It was truly some great work. I mean, the DVD won an award, won a Telly Award. Just to give you some idea of how significant that is. And I think part of it, yes, that was the production, but part of it was because of the event that they captured and documented. I think that was also a big part of why it won a Telly Award.
Wow.
So that just gives you an idea of this is what the church has, and apparently they're not aware of the treasure
that they have,
they own.
that they own.
Yeah,
That speaks within
kind of like
itself.
they don't realize the great musicians that they have
Yeah.
and treasure them.
Yeah.
I think this kind of falls in the same.
That's not true.
Well,
They love the musicians.
yeah.
Yeah.
But brother Chucky, love is what it does, not just what it says. It's what it does.
That's what it does.
Loose ride.
What it
Loose
does,
ride,
they
yeah.
invited you to play.
Huh?
They invited you to play.
Oh, listen, like I said, I say it again. I received more than I gave.
Yeah.
I think that says it all.
Yeah.
Even before that, I've never been. I've never been to a place where they told me to get up from playing. If they invited me to play anytime I show up. So, I think what you're feeling is, like I said, you're feeling a organizational barrier than it is individuals.
Yes, but let's understand, individuals make up an organization. So an organization doesn't just exist as this entity, in and of itself. And what I mean by that is there are individuals, one, like I said, that are members of the organization, and then there are people who administer that organization. And there's steps that administrations can take to help people understand that they are appreciated and wanted.
Right.
And maybe, okay, so I'll just say that's the challenge. And I agree there are individual churches that are limited in their resources as to how they can show appreciation. But that doesn't mean that you don't take steps to do that. And inviting you to play is very, that's well and good. Right. But at the same time, you also know that, hey, there should be some compensation around that. Okay. Well, let's keep it at a love supreme. Let's operate at a higher level. I'm good with that.
Love supreme.
And I like that. I like that. Let's leave it at a love supreme. No, I think this is good because all in all, it makes us do self-evaluation and self-check, even from an organizational standpoint. We need to check where we are, and are we really operating at a love supreme? Even as a church organization, that's important.
Well, again, if you remember, I said my book would be Evolvement and Enlightenment, right?
Yeah.
Meaning, hey, I'm holding myself to the same standard.
Yeah.
I have to get better too.
Yeah.
So, don't feel bad, HOG. I'm working at it too.
Right.
And as I told somebody, even the churches that so-called pay or have salaries, it's only a few people on that salary line.
Yeah.
The other people
I'm sorry.
have to come in.
Well, Chuck, the word is staff.
Okay.
It's only a few people on staff.
Yeah, I know you've been more places than I have. I understand. I got it. You and Dante would know about that.
Hey, well, it's what it is. It's what it is. But man, listen, I appreciate you guys not only for your contribution to this last album, but your contribution to countless musicians, just people, leaders in general. If you all don't ever hear from anyone else, you're hearing it from me. I'm giving you your praises. I'm giving you your honor because you guys are more than deserving, and you are more than due. Not only for the things that you have laid as a foundation for our generation and beyond, but for just who you are. Behind the music, in front of the music, on the music. You guys exemplify that, and I appreciate it. So thank you. Thank you for even doing this and coming on Dante's Harmony to have this dialogue and conversation. I appreciate it.
Keep up the good work.
I will.
Keep up the good work. Pray for us.
I will.
Thank you, Dante. I appreciate it, man.
I appreciate you all. I appreciate you all. Yeah. This podcast is being brought to you by B Apparel. B Apparel is a streetwear brand that is on a mission to remind, empower, and mobilize a generation to be who they were created to be. Be Apparel. For more information, go to www.beapparel.com. www.beapparelbrand.com. That's beapparelbrand.com. Use the code HARMON21 at checkout for an extra 10% discount. Again, that's HARMON21 at checkout for an extra 10% discount. Be sure to subscribe to our Patreon page for exclusive video content of all podcasts. Like us on Instagram, and be sure to like and review us on iTunes. The links are located in the bio and description of this podcast.